Welcome to Mary Walter Radio, the podcast. How are you? Good evening. Yeah, this was a surprise. I told everybody last week we weren't doing a podcast this week, and my plans changed. And I said, I'll take a week off. And I was in bed most of the day today because I threw my back out, which, wow, never knew how painful that was and never knew how easy it was. And so I was sitting there and I had actually contacted this guy over the weekend. I said, you want to interested in doing a podcast on Tuesday? Because I wasn't feeling great. And I been wanting to get him on. And so it all came together. And I said, well, it looks like we have to do a podcast. So here we are today. Welcome to the show. And here he is. This guy's not been on in a while. Bobby Burack. Bobby from Outkick joining us tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you so much. We always have such a good time with you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, of course, Mary. Happy to be here. I just want to say, last time I was on, maybe it was a time before, we talked about hypothetically making you a Tinder account, right? And we went through the ideas. But with this back situation, you don't want to put that in your Tinder bio. Just want to make it clear, right? Like we want to leave that part out of it.
Thank you for the tip. I appreciate that. You know, I've never, if you've never had, I've never had back problems. My husband has had them since, we were dating. He just has a quote unquote bad back. And I've never had this problem before in my life. And, I've seen him, like, oh, it hurts, it hurts. It's like, I get it. I get how, your back can hurt. Oh my holy God. It's insane. I've never had pain like this before, but I'm one of those people. So it has started yesterday, just out of the blue. And I slept like this last night on a heating pad. I got up every hour. So I sat with the heating pad and, we have one of those beds. Sat with the heating pad and I just, didn't move. And then I'm taking muscle relaxers and I'm on antibiotics or something else. And I'm taking Motrin and Tylenol, blah, 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 all stuff. Cause I don't care. When I'm in pain, bring on the drugs. I don't care. Better living through chemistry. These people got to tough it out. No. I'll take what you got. I'll take it. So I forced myself to get up every hour and I set a timer. I got up every hour and I made myself walk and I stretched and I did this whole series of stretches for my back and for my legs. And I did this whole series of stretches. And as the day went on, it slowly got better. I am 1,000% better than I was last night. I don't know how long I'm sitting in this chair for, but I slowly but surely got better. So it was good. So I forced myself because my husband always says, the German in me makes me, I will not allow my body to be sick. I will not allow my body to break down. So I got up and walked around every hour up and down the stairs, as painful as it was, and stretch. So hopefully it worked.
So I have a new update on me since I last been here. So you and I have a mutual friend in Stacy Washington, host of Sirius XM. I'm on with her every week, and as I've gotten to know her, she has always this line that I'm just somebody's mom on a radio. And I never really thought much of it. I just thought, okay, she's right. She has kids. She's motherly. But about a month ago, I had this terrible cold. I couldn't get rid of it. And Stacy got wind of it on air. And I didn't know, Mary, when she thinks that somebody's in need of some sort of health problem or medical, she opens up the phone lines and turns herself into Mama Stacy, and her producer Chris all give medical advice. And I started listening to them, and all of a sudden my cold was gone. So my advice to you is, if the back doesn't get better by, say, Friday, call in to Stacy's show on Monday for her advice.
Okay, I will do that. Like I said, muscle relaxers. It's definitely so much better than it was the other day, but I will do that. And I know both Stacy and Chris, and
okay.
So medical advice from either one of them scares me just a tiny little bit.
Look, neither one of them are doctors. However, I went to a doctor, no results. I went to Stacy on the radio and had immediate results. So just,
look at that.
One guy's opinion.
Good. All right. Listen, One Girl's Opinion, please like the podcast and please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. We would appreciate it. The audio is also available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you don't want to sit around watching the videos. Totally understand. But please, please, please like them. If you watch them, and please tell your friends. I would think that we're probably going to be sparsely attended because I told everyone there was no podcast this week. Sorry about that. But I did put it out and hopefully you retweeted it for me as well. Bill Haynes is here. Oh, Mango Mush from 1210 is here. So that's good. So I wanted to share this with you. I thought this was really funny. So as we know, there's war breaking out in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And I really worry that this is going to be a big deal because now Lebanon's involved and then Iran's involved. And it's growing. It's exponentially growing. But I saw this, and this is America Free News Network, and I've had them on different radio shows that I've done. I think I had them on Sirius as well, maybe when I was in for David Webb. And I just wanted to share this as just a fun way to start off talking about the war in the Middle East. Can you read that right there? Can you read that, guys? Let me see if I take us out. Let me remove me and Bobby and see if hilarious. You get it? You get it? They blow them up. They keep blowing them up, Bobby. They blow them up, and then there's a new one. So you see a plume of smoke in the sky because the latest Hezbollah leader has been.
So unfortunately, I couldn't see it. My screen went black, so I'm not sure what we're laughing at. But
oh, well, did you hear me?
No, I heard nothing. It just went black.
You couldn't hear me?
No.
Oh, I said, how do you know there's a new Hezbollah leader? It's like when a new pope is picked, you see a plume of smoke in the sky.
That's pretty good.
I thought it was hilarious. Somebody was saying the other day, I heard them, and I wish I could give credit where credit is due, but they said you got to realize the guys who are leading Hezbollah right now, they were the guys who weren't important enough to have pagers, and then they were the guys who weren't important enough to give the radios to, right? This is like the third tier. This is the third string. They're just like, your turn. And
yeah, it's like the guy in the basketball team who never gets to play, but everybody else ends up injured, so he has to step up and make the shot. Pretty much the same thing.
Exactly. Okay, so Katie Pavlich pointed out that just today alone, we have a dock strike not seen in 40 plus years that could cripple the economy, Katrina-level devastation in a number of southern U.S. states, war raging and a stalemate between Ukraine and Russia, and hundreds of missiles launched from Iran. So one of the things I wanted to bring up is I wanted let's quickly go to the dock workers because I know we have a lot to talk about, but like I said, I don't think we'll have as many we'll have as many comments from the viewers because I just think that a lot of people aren't watching today, not joining us because I told everyone there wouldn't be a podcast. Mango Mush says, my back is all effed up, so I feel for you, Mary. Hope it's feeling better soon. Yeah. I can't afford another injury. I just can't. I just don't have time for this. Why is this not coming up? There, hide. There we go. All right, so listen to this. This is apparently the head of the, International Longshoremen's Union, the ILWU is the name of it, I guess. Listen to this. Now, one of the things that the union wants is they want a 50% pay increase. 50%. Now, I realize you ask for 50% and you negotiate your way down to like 20, right? I get it. But still 20% is pretty good. But one of their things is they don't want automation. Right now, in other ports around the world, they have incredible automation, and they take these big, huge cargo containers, and it's all automated. How they take them off, and it's all done, with machines, and it's really fast. And they don't want automation. They don't want that in their contract. Now, I mean, having at their ports. In the U.S., we have old-fashioned ports. They're run by people they're not automated. So in their last contract, they had no automation. And in some of the ports, the owners did bring automation in violation of the contracts. Now they said we did the right thing. We said okay, but now we mean it, and like now we're striking. We want no automation. And I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, well, I was just at a conference, and it was about news media, and we were learning about AI and how there are already DJs on some of these channels that are all AI. They're not real people. They're AI DJs. They're not real. They're going to do the same thing with voiceovers for commercials. It's cheaper to just come up with a voice you like, put the text in, and it reads it, and you're not paying a human being to do the voiceover. So the voice. Oh no. Oh, we both went away and just came back.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I couldn't hear the end of that, but
yeah.
So
but my point is we're all there's going to be a lot of changes coming up. But could you imagine if like the candle workers union said no innovation, and we would all be we'd all be sitting in the dark because we'd have to have candles, we couldn't have electricity.
Yeah.
This is what happens. You have these things. So for them to say no automation at our ports when the rest of the world has all this high-tech ports and can load and unload so much faster than we can, is that realistic?
No, I think eventually you can't be the outlier when the outlier is the one who's just not innovative. I don't think that is long-term feasible. But hearing this, I can't help but harken back to a piece I wrote in June about the never-ending demand for AI and automation advancements. And you might think, well, I'm going a bit off track here, but I did so much research on this subject. This is terrifying, Mary. The amount of energy that AI systems are requiring right now, our world power grids cannot sustain stability at this rate. One of those data centers in Silicon Valley that are powered by Microsoft, Apple, and Google, they use more electricity than entire countries.
Yeah.
I believe they use more than Japan. At this rate, and this was as of June, if we don't make changes to the demand for AI, there's going to be global blackouts by 2030. As we saw in New York in the 1970s, but on a much larger scale. So while, yes, I think you want to stay up to date on the most accessible ways to use and utilize these ports, I think all of us all around the world have to be a bit cautious about how deeply invested we become in any sort of artificial intelligence, because who knows what that is going to look like in a decade now. So I do like the idea of not going fully reliant on it, just because we could be in severe danger if all of a sudden we become fully reliant on AI and the power grid just can no longer handle it.
Yeah, well, with the ports, they're not really talking about AI. I was just using AI as an example with what's happening in my industry and how we're all going to be replaced down the road. Thank you, Jesus. I'm close to retiring anyway. But for the longshoremen, you could start to integrate the innovation and automation into what's happening at our ports to make them more streamlined and more economical, right? And faster. Why not? But they don't want that. Porchview Farm says, I'm about to go from my MS in supply chain. Our ports are way behind the rest of the world. I didn't know you could get an MS in supply chain. Does Pete Buttigieg know that? Because I don't think Pete Buttigieg has an MS in supply chain. Oreo, I made it. Yes, you did. All right. So I want to play this for you guys. This is, I believe, the president of the Longshoremen's Union. And listen to what he says here, because to me, listen to what he said. I'll tell you what my first reaction was, and then I want to get yours, okay? So I'm not going to take you off the screen so you can hear what he says. I learned my lesson. Here we go.
These people today don't know what a strike is.
Right.
When my men hit the streets from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. they get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. The steel's not coming in. The lumber's not coming in. They lose their job. Everybody's hating the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are. Now I have the president screaming at me, I'm putting a Taft-Hartley on you. Go ahead. Taft-Hartley means I have to go back to work for 90 days. That's a cooling off period. Do you think when I go back for 90 days, those men are going to go to work on that pier? It's going to cost the companies money to pay their salaries. Well, they went from 30 moves an hour maybe to 8. They're going to be like this. Who's going to win here in the long run? You're better off sitting down and let's get a contract and let's move on with this world. In today's world, I'll cripple you. I will cripple you, and you have no idea what that means. Nobody does.
So, you heard what he had to say there. I'll cripple you. I'll cripple you. Talks like a gangster, right?
Yeah, I just got to think when I heard that, if we were ever to make that into a movie, are we casting Al Pacino or Robert De Niro to play him? Because that is just textbook Pacino De Niro there.
Yeah, head of Longshoremen's Union. I'm trying to figure out, because I heard some things tonight on Fox about this guy, if this is him. Harold Daggett. Okay. Yeah, there are allegations of mafia ties.
No surprise.
He has lived in luxury, owning a yacht and driving a Bentley. See, this is the thing with unions. The people, the rank and file, they're the ones who are going to go on strike. They're the ones who aren't going to eat. They're the ones who are going to be out there walking the picket line. They're the ones who are going to get hurt. The guys at the top that they pay, they literally live off the guys on the bottom, what they make, right? Because you got to pay them.
Yeah.
You got to pay the guy at the top. He's driving a Bentley. The guy at the bottom ain't driving a Bentley. See, this is why I don't get the whole union thing. I'm like, you guys, you could keep more of your money. And, you know, this guy's literally eating off your plate and you're okay with it.
Yeah, I think and so much of the idea is a scam because in theory, you unionize to gain power over the people above you. But in return, all you're really doing is elevating somebody else above you who's going to do your bidding for you, tell you what to do, tell you when to march in the streets when he's living pretty comfortable at the top. So yeah, I think the whole idea of, especially now, about unions, you listen to them, you read about it, and it's like, do these people understand exactly what they're signing up for when they're paying those union dues over and over and over again?
This guy became president of the ILU, I guess it is, ILA, in 2011. Right. Last year, his salary was $728,000. He collected another $173,000 as president emeritus of a local union branch. He lives in a 7,136 square foot home valued at $1.7 million on 10 acres in Sparta, New Jersey, which is a very nice part of New Jersey, according to Zillow and New Jersey property records. By comparison, his fellow union bosses at the AFL-CIO, Teamsters, and Auto Workers unions earn less than $300,000 a year. So he's making more than twice what they're making. He formerly owned a 76-foot yacht, and he also owned a Bentley, or still does. Elon Musk wrote in a post on X on Tuesday, dude has more yachts than me.
I will say there is one thing that I do appreciate about some of the unions, maybe like the UAW, is that it is probably the most efficient way to protect yourself from like DEI and cancel culture, because they do usually have your back in those cases. So if there is one benefit of paying those dues, I will say it's that, because they usually try to defend you when some bureaucrat comes out and says, hey, you're out of here. So I do want to be fair when it comes to that side of it.
Listen, I don't think they're all bad.
Right.
I just am a big fan of negotiate your own gig because you could maybe get a better gig, you know?
Well, it's like in our business. Do you want an agent or do you want to negotiate stuff yourself? I tend to think, why pay somebody 10% that might not have your best interest at hand when you know you want what's best for you? But a lot of people in our industry continue to pay agents 10% for every single year. I'm just not sure it's worth it.
Well, I do.
For a lot of the people, we saw this a lot during like Me Too. They pay these agents all this money, and your agent is supposed to be your advocate and always have your best interest. But as soon as anything came down, these big 3-letter agencies would turn on their clients faster than their own employers. They would put out these cowardly press releases saying we could no longer be associated with this person because of these allegations.
Right.
I'm just thinking, you've paid, I mean, some of these people have paid these agencies millions of dollars over the past decade, and they just turn on them as soon as the mob starts pressuring them. That's what I didn't like about agents and agencies in general. Again, not saying they're all bad. I mean, there's certainly a track record of them probably getting their clients more money than they otherwise would. But when I saw that happen time and time again, I just thought they were so spineless to do that.
Yeah. Well, I will say they do get you more money than you would have gotten otherwise.
I agree with
that. In 2005, the Justice Department accused Daggett, the head of the ILA, of being an associate of the Genovese crime family, one of the 5 families of the mafia. He took the witness stand that year. Federal prosecutors charged him with racketeering. He described himself as a target of the mob. A turncoat mafia member, though, had testified that he was under the mob's thumb. During the course of the trial, one of his co-defendants, an alleged major mob figure, disappeared. His body was found weeks later decomposing in the trunk of a car outside of a New Jersey diner. The guy's death has remained unsolved. Speculation circulated he was killed after refusing to plead guilty to avoid news reports of the trial. So, yay, New Jersey. When I was a kid, I remember stories about bodies being found in the trunks of cars. It happens. So.
Well, and I didn't know. Well, I somewhat had an idea, but I didn't realize that the 5 families of New York are very much still active. They just don't have any power. There was a really interesting column or profile actually from the New York Post breaking down where the 5 families sit today. I had no idea that they were just walking around the streets of New York, and people apparently know that they're still in the mob, but they don't do anything because they just don't matter. I didn't know that.
Well, yeah. I guess if you grow up with it, and it's not just New York, it's New Jersey too. They're not just in New York.
Yeah.
They're in New Jersey as well. But yeah, my husband's uncle lived across the street from Paul Castellano. Great neighbor. Don't borrow money from him. Fantastic neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you don't ask questions, but you know, I've lived in my town long enough that every now and then you hear there was a roundup, and you just figure out which neighbor's missing, and you know who went.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the fascination of the mob. And Bill O'Reilly has a great book on it, Killing the Mob. It's probably the best mob book written, at least that I've read. And the evolution of it is just fascinating. And there is, I don't know if it's concerning, alarming, or just somewhat it reaches into American culture. But there's been few phenomenons that average Americans are more interested in than the mafia. You look at the top books, podcasts, movies, TV shows, the mob and stories that depict the mob are always really high up there. So there's something about Americans who, when they hear the word mob or mafia, they're just glued instantly. And I'm one of those people. I actually, one day, one of my goals is to do a documentary on where the mob is today. I just think it's such an intriguing dynamic that we've had in this country for a very long time.
Oh yeah, there's stories. Again, you just know, and you don't ask questions, and they're great people, and they're good neighbors, and you just don't get involved in business with them, and you're fine.
We learned this.
Listen,
definitely don't get a business loan from them.
No. But everybody loved John Gotti. Everybody in John Gotti's neighborhood loved John Gotti. You know why? Because there was no crime in John Gotti's neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw in Chicago when the mob technically got kicked out, the streets actually got more violent.
Exactly.
Mm.
Here, Bangladesh from Philly. Show me a mafia neighborhood that has high crime. They keep that nice and clean. They
Well,
absolutely do, because you
well,
don't get out of line in their neighborhood. There's a code of conduct, for better or for worse.
mhm.
Again, just don't do business with them, and your neighborhood's clean. Everything's good. The wives volunteer at church. They do.
Mhm.
They do pump a lot of. Well, I'm not going to go into that. Let's see. What did Scott here? John Michael Montgomery, the famous country music singer, my former documented next door neighbor, the mob outlaws. I don't know what that means. Oreo says he was a member of the Firemen and Oilers Union. That was bad. Oh, I didn't know about that. I don't know anybody. Yeah, I never remember a union. Porchview says, when we were little kids, my dad would get my sister and me into the station wagon, and we would drive to wherever a union was striking to give them the finger and yell at them about being busted. That's hilarious. Oh.
Well, keep in mind, I live in Michigan, so the UAW, like I've seen these over and over again, all through my childhood, teenage years. You'd be driving, you'd see them out there. And speaking for like the UAW, growing up, like that was getting a job where you were in the automotive industry was the goal because of the security you had. So where I am, we've always somewhat been programmed to really respect these guys. And I do respect the workers. I have great respect for
100%.
welders, electricians, all those people. It's the people at the top of the unions that I just can't stand, because I think not only are they hypocritical, they're taking advantage of those workers.
Absolutely. The guy makes over $100,000 a year, and then you add in the $100,000 he makes from the local. The guy's making close to $1 million a year. But the people who are going to be walking that picket line tomorrow, who are no longer going to be getting paychecks, they're not. They're the ones who are going to hurt. They're the ones who are going to suffer. He ain't missing a meal.
Right, and I know from experience of knowing people who have partaked in these protests before and strikes. Part of being in a union, you usually amass a lot of overtime hours. That's how you make real bucks. When you're striking, you miss out on those opportunities. So it's not only you're just losing your basic check in exchange for whatever you get for striking, you can end up losing half or even double your pay depending on how much overtime you miss out on. But the guys at the top, they're still making the exact same.
So I have a theory, and I want to hear what you think about this. All right, you guys chime in. I want to hear what you have to say. By the way, I'm not checking over on Getter. If you're on Getter and you want to chime in, you can leave comments and I'll read them on the air. So if you're over on Getter, I'll read them on the air as well. Let me ask you a question. I just channeled Al Sharpton there for a hot second. Do you think that the reason Joe Biden's not doing anything about this, no Taft-Hawley or anything like that, Joe Biden's not talking about this strike at all, and this is in October, a month and 4 days outside of the election, do you think he's throwing Kamala Harris under the bus? Do you think, because here's my theory. The rank and file, I think, probably support Donald Trump. A lot of these unions, the rank and file support Donald Trump, but the leadership support the Democrats, right? So I think the rank and file, for the most part, for a lot of these unions, support Donald Trump. Here, Joe Biden, we know that Jill Biden, Dr. Jill, can't stand Kamala Harris, hates her. And what did Joe Biden do to Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi when they threw him out, when they launched that coup? What did he do? They were supposed to have a mini, I keep looking at the wrong camera, sorry. They were supposed to have a mini convention to pick a new candidate, and they were supposedly going to pick Michael Kelly. The astronaut.
Mark Kelly, isn't it?
Mark Kelly. I knew I'd get there eventually. Mark Kelly is who they were supposed to pick. What does Joe Biden do at the end of his bye-bye speech? He supports Kamala Harris, and he basically nominates Kamala Harris. Now that, to me, if it was done purposely, was a big finger to Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi for putting him out to pasture and overthrowing him. Now they get to give a big FU to Kamala Harris by not doing anything about this strike and totally undermining her. Because what did he say when he was on The View with the yapping Yenses? What did he say? Oh, she's with me all the time. She's my right-hand woman. She's so capable. I give her jobs all the time. So he tied her to his hip, which she's trying so desperately to get away from. And I know Dr. Jill can't stand her. So what do? Going into an election, you've got the Longshoremen Strike, and shelves are going to be bare by the time the election rolls around. It's got to hurt her, right?
Of course.
Or am I reading too much into it? What do you think?
No, I like it. And you're right. Political speak is obviously just so much deception. I bet you deep down, if we could get Dr. Jill in a truth serum, she would have wanted Donald Trump to win the election, because I think in their minds, the best thing that could happen is Donald Trump wins and they can rub it in the face of Obama and Pelosi and say, maybe they won't say it, but just give them that look like, she lost because you guys kicked me out. Now, I don't really buy that, because I think Donald Trump would have beaten Joe Biden handily in the election, but now we'll never know for certain. So we know that Joe and Jill probably want Kamala to lose. It actually might be the case for most presidents and vice presidents, because, spoiler alert, every time you read about one, that dynamic, they always hate each other. I think Trump and Mike Pence hate each other. Joe and Obama hate each other at the end. That's just usually the dynamic when you're a vice president and president. So I think any move that could undermine or hurt Kamala Harris, the Bidens would be all for at this moment.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I don't know. That's where my brain goes, because there's something wrong with me. Portview Farm says, when our teachers went on strike, my uncle took a bus in his bathrobe and broke their picket line. It was hysterical. My family broke that strike. Longshoremen get paid by the job. Okay. I would love to spend a day with Portview Farm's family, because they seem like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. I want to switch gears, because you've done some work on the elections, right? You've been doing some work with, I just want to play this. I want to bring this in. And I want to start this off, because I think this is the best ad you could ever see for Donald Trump anywhere. The best thing I have ever seen. And so I want to play this for you guys. Then we want to talk about the work that you've done, Bobby, and your magic, like look into your magic mirror to tell us where this election's going. Here we go.
Donald Trump came to the Detroit Economic Club and stood there in front of the Ford Motor executives and said, if you close these factories as you're planning to do in Detroit and build them in Mexico, I'm going to put a 35% tariff on those cars when you send them back, and nobody's going to buy them. It was an amazing thing to see. No politician, Republican or Democrat, had ever said anything like that to these executives. And it was music to the ears of people in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. He's saying the things to people who are hurting. And it's why every beaten down, nameless, forgotten working stiff who used to be part of what was called the middle class loves Trump. He is the human Molotov cocktail that they've been waiting for. The human hand grenade that they can legally throw into the system that stole their lives from them. Although they lost their jobs, although they've been foreclosed on by the bank, next came the divorce, and now the wife and kids are gone. The car's been repoed. They haven't had a real vacation in years. They're stuck with the shitty Obamacare bronze plan where you can't even get a fucking Percocet. They've essentially lost everything they had, except one thing. The one thing that doesn't cost them a cent and is guaranteed to them by the American Constitution, the right to vote. They might be penniless, they might be homeless, they might be fucked over and fucked up. It doesn't matter, because it's equalized on that day. A millionaire has the same number of votes as the person without a job, one. And there's more of the former middle class than there are in the millionaire class. The dispossessed will walk into the voting booth, be handed a ballot, close the curtain, and take that lever or felt pen or touchscreen and put a big fucking X in the box by the name of the man who has threatened to upend and overturn the very system that has ruined their lives. Donald J. Trump. They see that the elites who ruined their lives hate Trump. Corporate America hates Trump. Wall Street hates Trump. The career politicians hate Trump. The media hates Trump. Trump's election is going to be the biggest fuck you ever recorded in human history.
So, what did you think? Now, that's supposedly Michael Moore.
Wow, the director. I thought it was awesome. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, someone's saying that it's Rob Reiner, but
isn't Michael Moore like overt leftist?
He is, but he was supposedly, from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, he was lecturing people like, this is why you don't understand why people like Donald Trump. And he was trying to explain to someone, this is why they like Donald Trump. He's the big FU to the, you know, and he was explaining to them, and he's right.
Yeah, right. Well,
you know, so I don't know if that was not Rob Reiner. That was 100% not Rob Reiner, but it did kind of sound like Michael Moore. So
yeah, well, I think that's part of what's made Trump, I think, this avatar for normal people, because obviously he's not a normal person. He is, by definition, an elite, but his anti-establishment bona fides align with normal, ordinary people. That's why you've seen a lot of people who had no interest ever in politics walking around with MAGA hats and having MAGA signs in their yard. It's because that FU is talking about the establishment, the media, these U.S. institutions, establishment Washington, permanent Washington. And that is why when there was debates about whether Ron DeSantis could one day overtake Trump before this election after the 2022 primary, I was still all in on Trump for that exact reason. And I like Governor DeSantis a lot, but it's Trump's motivation to, I think, not only drain the swamp, but give voices to people who are completely removed from the system that makes him such a powerful politician.
Yeah. So I agree. I just love that. I thought that was the most powerful thing ever. I just thought that was such an incredible ad. It was absolutely unbelievable. So tell us what you've been doing. You said you've been delving into the numbers, and I will tell you right off the bat, I don't buy any of it. I don't buy polls. I don't buy any of it. They poll like 1,000 people. Right. And I mean, does anybody answer their phone when these things come through? I'm always afraid that every time I get calls or I get these text messages, hey, this is research polling, this is so-and-so, this is that, I just automatically assume that if I click on that link, they're going to like get the contents of my entire phone in my bank account is going to be emptied into somewhere into New Delhi. So I don't respond to any of those things.
Yes, I will caution this. So I've been working on electoral maps since June, right before the first debate. And I will caution that I am using data from polls because without that, we don't have a lot of information. So I understand that people who don't respect polls, don't believe in them, and are under the assumption that polls don't measure public perception. They're designed to shape public perception. So I'm with you on all that. But for this exercise, this data is about all we have. It's hard to measure vibes because, well, vibes are geographical and demographical. But I started looking on this newest one that I'm working on over the weekend. And so, Mary, there's 3 states when I'm looking over these polls, and also the betting odds. The betting odds in the United Kingdom have actually been very eerily accurate the past 2 elections. So I don't dismiss what the betting odds say, because that's money. So people are not lying there. They're actually betting on what they think is going to happen. But there's 3 states that I believe right now are 50-50 states that could go in either direction. It's Nevada, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. I don't have a read on them. Don't think anybody can confidently predict any of those 3 states. But here's what's interesting. Of the states that I predicted, here's the current toll. 251 blue, 251 red. So right now it's a tie with 36 electoral votes left. Well, 19 reside in Pennsylvania. So you apply that 19 to the 251 on that side or the 251 on the other side, and the winner takes all. And this has been consistent, I think, from June, where the winner of Pennsylvania, more likely than not, will win this election. I'm actually not all that concerned about Michigan and Wisconsin. In this model, I have both of those states going blue, but it won't matter if Trump's able to win Pennsylvania. I think it is so crucial this time, more so in the past two elections. And I think the Republican Party ought to be pretty happy that Kamala did not pick Governor Josh Shapiro, because according to this data, he would have really helped her in Pennsylvania.
And, you know, what's interesting about Pennsylvania, Scott Pressler is doing God's work in Pennsylvania. I mean, he's doing incredible, incredible work in Pennsylvania. And why the Republican Party is not doing that work, well, it's because it's the Republican Party. So Scott Pressler is doing that work in Pennsylvania. To your point about Josh Shapiro, 100%. What a dumb choice. Yeah. You know, not taking Josh Shapiro, but she was afraid because he's Jewish, and she's too afraid to lose the Muslim vote. But did you see what happened in Michigan? The mayor of Hamtramck, which is 60% Muslim,
right.
The entire council, all the government is run by Muslim Democrats. The mayor of Hamtramck endorsed Donald Trump.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
Yeah, that was a miscalculation on her part to prioritize the Muslim vote over the Pennsylvania vote, because it is in some ways Michigan versus Pennsylvania. Now, only 4 electoral votes separate those states, but an election that could be this tight, those 4 votes could loom pretty large. But so here's the good news for Donald Trump. He historically is underrepresented in these polls. Talk about New York Times and Siena. They underrepresented him by 9 points and 16 and 5 points 4 years ago. So if it's even off 5 points, he would win every major of the 7 battleground states, because a lot of them he's trailing by like 3 points. So if they're off by 5, he's in very good shape. I think the bad news for Donald Trump, and this is what does alarm me a little bit, and again, I don't know how much credence we're going to give some of these polls, but on July 1st, voter turnout was expected to be at 55%. It's now at 65%. So there's been a pretty significant jump in voter turnout expectancy. I tend to think that is from Biden to Kamala, that handoff. Don't know that for a fact, but we do see it particularly among suburban women in places like Michigan and Wisconsin. So that would be my rundown as we speak today. What are your thoughts on that?
So I've been watching like Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA and Scott Pressler as well, but Charlie Kirk has been at these universities. He was at Arizona State University, and he registered something like almost 400 students for Republican. I think our young men, and a story just came out, and it was either the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal yesterday, that showed that the gap between our young men and our young women has gotten even bigger. We know our young women are overwhelmingly liberal because they feel, and this is, they've been brainwashed. They bought the whole thing hook, line, and sinker, right? But our young men are very disenfranchised. And it's not just white young men. It is Black young men. It is Hispanic young men. It cuts across the board. Maybe not so much Asian, but definitely white, Black, and Hispanic. The white men, young men especially, because they're white. You're racist based on the color of your skin. Automatically, you are at the bottom of the pile, dude, because of the color of your skin. You know that if you apply to a job and a Black kid applies to a job, and especially a Black woman, you ain't getting the job, even if you're more qualified. You know that. So there's a lot of disenfranchisement amongst our young men, and that gives me hope that they're smart enough to wake up. And I think it is. I think they are waking up. It's almost cool among young men to be conservative. It's almost cool to be, because you want to be a rebel. That's the ultimate in being a rebel, right? If you want to be against the establishment, that's the ultimate in doing it, is being for Trump. And I think seeing it play out in our college campuses when Trump went to, what was it, the football game, Georgia, was it Georgia, Alabama? They were screaming for him. Look at the frat bros who protected the flag, right?
Right.
Look at there was just a video that came out with some fraternity, I guess at Alabama or whatever, and they had a Kamala hat and a Trump hat, and they picked the Trump hat. There it goes. I'm right back. So they picked the Trump hat, right? So I think that there is a movement among young men, and whether for good or for bad, but when something becomes trendy, it takes off. It takes, right? And so I think that becomes kind of like a thing, especially with a fraternity, especially with the college bros. I can see where you're going to see a shift. I also think African American men across the board are moving to Donald Trump. Whereas African American women, not so much, but African American men and Hispanics in general, because they tend to be Catholic, they tend to be more family oriented, they tend to be more religious, and they tend to be less pro-abortion. So there you go. That's me.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, look, we're in agreement on a lot of that. It is white suburban women that worry me when it comes to this election, just in some of those battleground states. Don't love his numbers there. But again, that is just assuming the polls for this exercise are the gospel. And I don't really think they are. But when I apply the numbers to the map, this is the map I get, which is 251 versus 251 with 3 states. I still have gray. But there is one suspicion that I have here. When we look at these state polls, the battleground states, we keep seeing that number like 15% of people surveyed were independent. But you bring up the gender gap. Are those majority independent women or majority independent men? They don't say that, and that could drastically sway it. If the number of women that they're surveying in the independent category are outpacing the men, that is going to flip that state blue every time in one of those battleground states. So when they're not transparent about that, it's very hard to get a read on that, which very well could be happening in a state like Michigan. I have Michigan blue because of those calculations. But if those independents are mostly women, I don't know that Michigan actually will turn out blue.
I mean, if they're mostly men.
Well, I'm saying if the ones surveyed are mostly women, then you're going to get a slanted view in favor of Kamala, because I don't know what the breakdown is. But if you were to then survey men, it's going to be red. So what actually happens in November is very hard to project.
So here's the other wild card. When people can't feed their family, but this is kind of like the baby formula thing, right? When people can't feed their family because of the Longshoremen Strike, I think that plays in. That's one thing.
Yeah.
The other thing, war in the Middle East,
of course,
is looming large. And you know what? Mothers who have young sons, and remember, Democrats wanted to draft young women too. Republicans stopped it. It's not one of those situations of I'm not going and mom's going to write me a note and get me out of it. No, you're going. That's how it is. That's how it works. So I think that if that continues, that definitely I think it can play into it. That's just me.
Right, because I think there are 4 things that play in Donald Trump's favor: the economy, the border, ending these senseless wars, and I don't know if you want to put cost of living with the economy or not, so it's 3 or 4. The border, the economy, in I think not only ending senseless wars, but leading the country when these wars break out. Who do you trust more to be the most powerful person in the world? Is it Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? And I think that's where a lot of independents who decide the election are going to say, even if I don't love some things about Donald Trump, he's clearly a better leader in the time of crisis, particularly when it comes to things internationally. So Donald Trump has a lot working his favor when it comes to policy. Now, of course, the media is going to try to downplay policy and make it about everything but policy. But when it comes to policy, and this is according to a CBS News poll, Americans trust Donald Trump more on policy. That's been pretty evident 100%. In every study we've seen so far.
No, 100%. You're absolutely right. Let's see. I just want to get to some of these comments. Oreo says he's never been called.
Electoral map.
We kind of lost you. We have a horrific connection. I'm so sorry. I don't think it's you, but you're all fuzzy now. We kind of lost you there. You sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. Yeah, if anybody has any questions about the electoral maps, I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah, I just said if anybody has questions about possible scenarios or which states or what, please ask.
Absolutely. So Manglemush out of Pennsylvania says polls have become propaganda to cast doubt if you don't believe an election can be rigged. Pressler, Pressler's a good dude. He's working his tail off in PA. Scott Pressler flipped Bucks County to Republican. Yes, he did. This just came up today. 218,000 voters have been wrongly marked as having provided proof of citizenship due to an error in Arizona. So there's an error. Oh, well, sorry, but they've known it since September something, and they never took care of it. So, oh, well, we'll just have to let them vote. That happened in Arizona. All right. So a couple of things here. It's October 1st. What's the October surprise?
It's funny. The last two October surprises, actually, well, both of them should have hurt Democrats. The second last one, the Hunter Biden laptop story, didn't. I mean, it would have, according to a lot of studies. There's 1 in 6 Biden voters say they would have voted differently had they known the validity of that report. So I'm very curious. Does the October surprise? Because it doesn't matter who it's targeted at. It's about who does it actually help or hurt. And that's what I find fascinating. What are we, 6 weeks out from the election? I tend to think it's going to be a toss-up.
Not even. I think we're 5 weeks out, right?
5 weeks? Wow.
Right, because it's the 5th. It's November 5th, and it's October 1st. So, 5 weeks.
5 weeks. Yeah, 5 weeks. Look, I would love to see a blowout. I'm hoping that by 1 o'clock on, I guess, October or November 6th, it'd be at that point. We know that Donald Trump wins. I think it's going to be close. I think, look, nobody wants to talk about it, but there is a system here. There is a game that I don't think helps Donald Trump in any way. And who knows what other kind of influence and shenanigans we're going to see before the election. But I'm glad that we're talking because I've been thinking about something for a while now. And no one's allowed to really say this, but I'm going to say it because it's true. The powers that be have tried everything to stop Donald Trump from winning the election. We can go down the list. They raided his home. They arrested him. They convicted him. If he wins, does anybody?
They tried to kill him. They shot at him
twice at least.
Right, twice.
I mean, probably twice. I'm sure they're involved in both of them, I guess. But what if he does win? Do we expect these people just to say, "Okay, Donald Trump wins"? Like, that's terrifying to me. What they would do if Donald Trump wins? I mean, it's horrifying because I don't know how far they'll take this. I know Tucker Carlson asked J.D. Vance, could a military coup be the result? I mean, obviously, I hope not, but I wouldn't put anything past them. And by the way, J.D. Vance said he's also terrified of that scenario.
Wow. Yeah, Ron says, in my humble opinion, Trump totally has energy policy on his side, too. There's that as well.
I agree. Yeah. I guess the question is how many Americans know about that, but I think if they did, absolutely.
Yeah. Scott says, hello, Scott's just jumping in here. So yeah, I don't know what the October surprise is, and you ask a very good question. Okay, so if Trump wins, I don't think we know on the morning after. I think they pull another one of these, Trump wins, and here come the votes, here come the votes, here come the votes, here come the votes. So we're going to count for days and days and days and weeks, and we're going to go on and on and on, and then suddenly Kamala Harris wins. I just have no faith in the system. I hate to say it, but I have zero faith in our election system, none whatsoever.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah, and right. That's another thing. People want to email me after I write these stories, and they're always like, "What percentage chance do you give Donald Trump to win? Is it 60?" And I'm like, probably not, because I think of like what you said, like it's not as easy as it should be. It's just, again, they have done everything to try to get in his way. Whatever levers they can pull, legally or not, they're going to try it.
They're going to pull it. Yeah,
it's hard for me to envision a scenario where they just let the people decide this.
Right. It's very sad.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
like
very sad. That's why it has to be so overwhelming. Like people have to turn out, people have to wait in line. And I'm telling you right now, and I've said this before, I am a big fan now of voting like a day or two before the election, or wherever you can. I go to a Democrat city right down the road here. I go there. I vote in a Democrat because you know what? The problems with the machines are always on election day. They're never the day before election day. They're never a week before election day. They're on election day. And if you go to an area that's Democrat, they don't lose those votes. So that's what I do. I don't trust it, period.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like that is the ideal scenario. I think Dan Bongino, what's he always say? Make it too big to rig. I don't know if that's in this culture when things are so divisive. It's going to be hard for either candidate, I think, to win this thing easily. Just again, looking at the way that Matt breaks. I mean, look, there is a scenario, I guess. I mean, where like if Trump, really wins and like that blue wall we always say, then it could be pretty difficult. But if it's up to like one or two states, like I think it's going to, and then all of a sudden it's Saturday and we don't know, because if this thing comes down to one state, either Arizona or Pennsylvania, I mean, at that point, I think it's a really dangerous scenario. I think Arizona was the last one to report 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Saturday until wasn't it Saturday until all the networks said that Arizona was done?
Yeah, it's going to go up. And Arizona is the one who accidentally just let 218,000 people who they're not sure if they're citizens or not, but we're getting a lot of votes now. So, it is what it is.
And we saw during the midterms, Pennsylvania took forever, wasn't it? 2 years ago, I believe they were one of the holdups. Yeah. Arizona too. So it does scare me that the two states that I deem most crucial seem to be the ones where we can never get an answer from.
Yeah. And Pennsylvania is the one where they were changing the rules on voting during COVID and what could be counted and what couldn't be counted. It doesn't have a date on it, and none of the rules were changed legally. They didn't go through the state legislatures. They were just made up. I'm going to make the rule, and that was it. So what counted, and you had to have the correct date in this county, but in this county you didn't have to have the correct date. So
what makes me so mad, Democrats are running on this message, save democracy. Hold on a second. What they did by pushing Joe Biden out and just pretty much electing Harris, that is the antithesis of a democracy. That is that is by definition an oligarchy, which I'm starting to think that's what America actually is, by the way. Like we always debate, is it a constitutional republic? Is it a democracy? No, it's an oligarchy. The people with the money control this country. Obvious. Especially in the Democratic Party. I mean, it is full on oligarchy right now where people that we don't vote control the party with their finances. So this whole thing that they're going to be the answer to save democracy is such a lie. And I can't even stand hearing it at this point.
Oreo says, do you think this hurricane that came through will have a great impact on the vote?
I think when an election is going to be projected to be as close as it is, I think everything can be a factor. I think what we saw today with Iran can be a factor. I think the hurricane can be a factor. Everything can be a factor in a toss-up election.
And you know what's interesting to me with Iran, and then I quickly want to change topics because we have to go because there's a debate coming up. And I was going to do the show after the debate like we did with the presidential one, and I just didn't have it in me, so I'm super sorry. We forget, and I try not to let them forget on X, but it seems that the media has forgotten, and most I think even conservatives have forgotten that Iran is the country that has a hit out on Donald Trump. Number one, they're trying to get rid of him, right? We know that there are three rings of Iranians in this country, assassination rings in this country out to get Donald Trump. And Iran is the one that hacked Donald Trump's campaign and gave the information to the Biden campaign and also some to Washington Post and Politico. And if Washington Post and Politico hadn't turned it over to the authorities, we never would have known because the Biden campaign did not turn the information over. So why do the Iranians want Kamala Harris to win? Why are we not talking about that? All I hear is Putin, 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 and Putin wants Trump. Putin endorsed Kamala Harris, number one, and the Iranians are trying to off Donald Trump. So that's how much they want Kamala Harris, and nobody talks about it.
Yeah. I don't know who wants Kamala the most, Iran, Ukraine, or China, in all seriousness. I mean, they're all praying for her to win because she's weak, controllable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you really have to know. Like, if you just sit back and say, are the people who want to harm us the most want Kamala Harris to win? What does that tell you?
Yeah, exactly. But we just walks right on by.
Last point on this topic. I go back to one message I think the GOP is not reminding people enough. The Democrats made George Floyd the avatar of the last election. What about Lincoln Riley? Like, her face should be a constant reminder of the dangers of this open border. I really think that you need to remind people that could happen to any girl that's running a track, because of how dangerous this country is right now when you're allowing these illegal thugs to just walk right in.
Yeah. Oh, they're just here for a better life. You're racist.
Right.
Watching your back says drinking game for the debate. I am on muscle relaxers. I don't think that's a good idea. Or it could be fun. It could go either way. Porchview Farm says democracy in Marxist lingo is voting in one party central planning communism. It's very true. Scott says, I hear that this Pennsylvania, the state that's crucial, if a definitive. And I think you're right. He agrees with you. Jack says, I don't like the idea of hot mics for the candidates. Walz is a loudmouth liar. What do you think about that? I kind of wish they would mute the mics because of Donald Trump, but I think Walz has a bigger mouth than Donald Trump, so I kind of like it.
Yeah, I mean, CBS says that they're not going to get involved in fact check, but then they clarify saying, well, if something's egregious enough, we're going to step in. Well, who decides what's egregious or not?
Of course.
So, well, I mean, I'm sure Norah O'Donnell is just going to, be objective when she decides who she can and cannot fact check.
Right. I just hope, I mean, I don't know what to expect from JD Vance. And I said Donald Trump. Donald Trump's not debating. JD Vance, I don't know. He probably, I think, is a much better debater than Tim Walz. I would think. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from him. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to get my heating pad on my back. My muscle relaxers, and I'll be already sitting there like an old lady. Let's see. Porchview Farm says, watching your back. Walz does jazz hands. Yeah, he's all over the place. I mean, I grew up around a lot of Italians, and you grew up in New Jersey. There's Italians all over the place, and they use their hands all over, but not like him. He uses his hands weird. They're like out here all the time. They're like, woohoo, they're like. And I just don't think he's that smart. I really don't. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I watched SNL on Saturday. He gave them so much material to mock him, and they shied away from all of it. There's been very few vice presidents that are more mockable than Tim Walz. I mean, just kind of like a goof of a guy.
He is no. He and Doug Emhoff are they're the new definition of masculinity.
Well, hold on. Did you see the Washington Post said that Doug is what they say the modern woman's definition of sexy?
No. Sorry, Jack says Norah O'Donnell is a known Trump hater. They all are.
Yeah, I mean, there's no difference. David Muir, Norah O'Donnell, Lindsay Davis, they're all the same.
Right. They're all for the same club. Yeah. Oreo says, break out the popcorn and Oreos and a nice glass of milk. Yeah. So I'm definitely going to watch that. So what do you think is going to happen tonight? Do you have any prognostications on what we should expect? I've got nothing because I don't know. I know nothing about JD Vance other than what I saw in Hillbilly Elegy. Yeah, so I got nothing on him. I don't know.
I think the moderators are really going to try to press him on the childless cat lady stuff because I think that's the one thing that the left just feels like they can weaponize. I would expect that to come up. I don't expect them to ask Tim Walz about all of his many lies, whether it is about his military status, his coaching status. By the way, he wasn't a head coach in high school. I don't know why he keeps lying about it. He lied about how he conceived one of his children. So yeah,
he didn't.
No. No. According to CNN, he said that he misspoke. That wasn't true.
How do you misspeak about something like that? Misspeaking, by the way, is a nice word for lie.
Yeah.
And he also lied. We just found out today that he said he was in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square. He was not. He was in Nebraska. Like, I don't understand why he keeps doing this. Does he just not think he's going to get caught? Like,
I think that's probably it. Yeah, just naive, ignorant. But yeah, I would love to see the moderators say, "Hey, can you clarify why you keep on lying?" But that's not going to happen. But I would expect them to go pretty hard on abortion, and probably IVF, because I think that CBS has the same motive that all these networks do, and that is to help the Democrat Party make them a little stronger than when they came in. So I would expect the questions to be pretty slanted in favor of Walz. But as far as expectations go, Vance is very strong when he goes on Sunday morning television and the anchor tries to catch him. He's very quick on his feet. So I would expect him to do pretty well tonight. Walz is a bit more bombastic, so I don't know how that will play, but gut feeling Vance will prove he's the much smarter candidate tonight.
Well, we'll see what happens. Oreo says Walz will waltz and Vance will advance.
By the way, do you think this debate will have any impact on the election? Because I don't.
No.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't think it's going to matter.
Walz would be blaming everything on Trump, taking a page out of Kamala's playbook. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he can answer a question.
Yeah. Or does CBS make him answer the question? One of the things we saw during the debate on September 10th, Kamala would dodge the question, and they never really followed up and said, well, is this a yes or a no? They did that to Trump, I think, 4 different times.
Yeah. Porsche Farm, Walz honeymooned in China at Tiananmen Square on an anniversary. Yeah, I saw that, but I don't even know if that's true anymore. Right? Do we even know if that's true? Because everything we find out about this guy, everything's a lie. Everything about him's a lie. What I find the best part of all of this, the entire thing, is Bernie Sanders said, 3 weeks ago, when asked, do you think her values, she says her values are still the same, but she's changed her position. What did Bernie Sanders say? No. She's just saying what she needs to say to get elected. I'm like, and no, I'm constantly repeating that on X all the time. It's amazing. Bernie Sanders, said the quiet part out loud, and these people just, she's allowed to change her mind. I'm like,
well, by the way, we talked about this oligarchic system in the Democratic Party. They stepped in to prevent Bernie Sanders from winning twice. This is 3 times in a row. They pretty much said Hillary's going to be the nominee. Voters be damned. Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. Bernie bros, you don't matter. And this election, they said, it doesn't matter who you pledge your votes for. We're going to install Kamala Harris. So I'm sure Bernie Sanders is as frustrated with the structure as all of us, but obviously he can't express it like us because he still needs them.
Right. Well, and they're not going to give him anything else, I'm sure Joe Biden, look, Bernie got a nice house on Lake Champlain in exchange for a drop in ad. We all know he got a nice house there on an island, so he's got that's his 3rd home. And he's such a Marxist. What is he? A socialist, Marxist, whatever he is, owns 3 homes. And I'm sure that the Biden clan is going to be able to now walk away with all their ill-gotten gains. There's going to be pardons all around. And that was done in exchange for Joe saying, adios.
Well, I think also it was a way to protect Hunter for
of course
his future. Hey, you step aside, we'll make sure he never ends up long term.
And Jim and Ashley and the grandchildren who got money from the Chinese and Dr. Jill, they're all going to be able to sail away into the sunset with all of their ill-gotten gains. And nothing's going to happen to them. And that was an exchange for Joe Biden stepping down. And Joe Biden's on The View talking about how I could beat Trump, I could do this, I could do that. I'm like, well, then why did none of the yapping yenses say to him, well, then why did you step down?
Yeah. Right.
Because everybody knows why he didn't step. They all know the game, and they're all perfectly fine with it. To your point, of an oligarchy, of having zero democracy, while they all scream, "We're protecting democracy." But have you noticed you don't see that much on X anymore? You don't see protecting democracy that much anymore. They've kind of moved on from that.
Yeah, they tried to do the weird thing that was stupid, kind of senseless. Yeah, they should not ever say it again, because they have absolutely no room to talk about democracy, because they don't believe in democracy, and the Democratic Party hasn't believed in democracy in a very long time. I mean, you just go through their leaders. None of them respect the system at all. They want to subvert and manipulate the system really at all costs, no matter what great damage it does to this entire nation.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack says if Biden didn't step down, he would have been Article 25. Well, that's what they threatened him with. Allegedly, they threatened him with Kamala Harris is going to call for it because she can call for it because she's the speaker. She was going to call for it, and they were ready to take Joe out that way if he did not agree.
Well, I think the problem. I mean, I would presume if you kind of connect all the dots, I think the original plan was let's try to push Biden over the finish line and have him win, then replace him and then install somebody. But after that debate, they realized that plan's not going to work. We need to get rid of him ASAP.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why, if Trump hadn't agreed to that early debate, it would have blown up all of their plans. Trump fell for it and at the time didn't know what it was. But honestly, if Republicans would be a little bit more proactive, they would have seen exactly what that early debate was, why they wanted that early debate. It gave them a reason to get rid of Joe Biden. If they had waited until after the nomination and Donald Trump said, no, when you get your candidate after the DNC, yeah, I'll debate your candidate. If he had done that, they would have been stuck with Joe Biden.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of that, the Heritage Foundation has cited all of these laws, why it was too late to change candidates in places like Wisconsin and Nevada. I don't know why nobody ever covered that more. I thought they actually had a strong legal case from what I read, but that just got kind of brushed away. Very curious if they ever bring that back up.
Well, there were some states that the Republican governor or the Republican legislature gave them a pass, like gave him a get out of jail free card. Okay, you can, take Joe Biden off the ballot. And they would never do that for a Republican, but the Republicans are patsies. And so they gave them that. They gave them that free pass.
It's interesting.
So let's see. Scott, you got the last word here. We're out then. I heard since President Joe Biden was out of there that VP Harris was their only choice. They had to build her up and get her out for the election. There was no one besides her. No, Mark Kelly, I think, would have done it. I think they could have had Mark Kelly, but because Joe Biden in that speech said, put Kamala Harris's name out there and said, Kamala Harris will make a great candidate, they were stuck with her at that point. And so they had to do and listen, they've done a great job rehabbing her. They really have. I mean, the media has really done a phenomenal job with that,
Yeah, no, I mean, I wrote about this last week. Like the media, probably historians would say ever since JFK was in the White House that they've leaned pretty far to the left, but they've always tried to hide it. They were like, no, we're straight down the middle. They don't care anymore. They're pretty open about it. Like, yeah, we want the Democrats to win. If you don't like it, oh well.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, that's one of the reasons why I don't trust the election integrity in this country, because I don't think they care if you see them cheat. I don't think they care. No, I don't think they care if every ballot, because they go, yeah, all the ballots that came in at 2:00 in the morning were 100% for Kamala Harris. Oh, well, they're not going to care.
Right. Yeah.
Well, they got mixed in with everything else. I don't know where they came from. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the big change, right? Is that the people who run the media, they're perfectly fine if you know them that they are partisan hacks, but they believe that they have this moral obligation that they were put here by God to make sure Donald Trump doesn't win the election. So they don't care what's at stake, what's fair, what's democratic by definition. They just want to make sure Donald Trump doesn't win. That's all.
Yep. All right, last two comments and we're out of here. Jack C says what was never covered more was the Pennsylvania AG changing the election laws before the count was stopped. Right. We were talking about that a little bit. Yeah. No. Yep. It was right in there. And Manglemush says, I was almost expecting Michelle Obama. I'm going to read it right, Manglemush, to come out of the woodwork. I kind of was thinking Michelle Obama as well. I think Michelle Obama would have been unstoppable, but her husband's already running everything behind the scenes. She doesn't have to run for it, right?
Yeah, I think most people that I spoke to, in and around Washington, all said if Michelle wanted it, she would have gotten it. Evidently, she didn't. So, but yeah. And I think the win for Trump, we talk about how the media, the way they treat Kamala Harris. Can you imagine what they'd be saying about Michelle Obama right now?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Portuguese says, great conversation with Bobby. We Great Lakes people think alike. And Jack said Michelle Obama hated politics. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Ori says MAGA party in New York City outside CBS News before tonight's big VP debate. Ah, nice. All right, we're going to go watch the debate. So thank you. I keep looking at the wrong camera. I apologize for the problems mid-show there. Thank you for sticking with us with the problems that we had. And the connection kept going, but it would lose you, it would lose me, Bobby. So I don't think it was us. I think this was totally a StreamYard issue, but that happens. So have a great week, everyone. And I will be back. And where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Outkick.com, X, SiriusXM every Wednesday. And I see it pop up different places. So just keep your eyes open.
And SiriusXM, he's on with Stacey Washington, who airs 9 to midnight. Do you have a specific time you're on with her?
Every Wednesday, so somewhere on Wednesday. So just if you listen to the podcast, you can get it early Thursday, and it's always a good time.
All right, great. And don't forget, please like this podcast. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. And the audio is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Probably tomorrow, probably not today, because I'm going upstairs to take my muscle relaxers as soon as I get out of this chair. Oh God. And hopefully I will be in better shape next week. Bobby, thank you so much for joining me. And if you're looking for him on X, it's Burack Bobby _. All right. So if I just want people to know how to find you if they're having a hard time getting you. So thank you so much.
Appreciate that.
And everybody have a fantastic night. Bye-bye.